Good morning, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture. I'm out here with George, who's my garden helper today, and we are taking care of a much neglected chore, which is pruning my thornless blackberries. Now, this is a chore that I should have done in the fall, and I just ran out of time because life. So I just want to encourage all of you, if you are working in your garden, that should be a source of peace and replenishment and enjoyment. Your garden should bring you joy. It should not be a source of stress and anxiety. If you don't get to something in your garden, if you have a little bit of neglect going on in different spaces, if life gets busy and you don't take care of things on schedule in the garden, I want you to give yourself permission to just let those things go. Be forgiving with yourself the same way you would want to be with your friends and loved ones. Extend that same kind of grace and forgiveness to yourself, and know that some things are going to get missed every year, and that's okay. Your garden can still be a lovely place of peace and provision, even if you don't get all your chores done on time or ever. So today I'm going to try and get my triple crown blackberries back into shape and ready for spring. And I want to walk you through that process. Now, you can use this video as a reference come fall when you're ready to do it at the correct time, or like me, you can use it as a reference right now in late winter if you are trying to play catch up. You won't harm your plant. It will still produce really, really well, even if you are a few months late getting to this chore. Now, a couple of quick notes about the tools that you want to use. You want to use hand pruners or secateurs, which George is using, so I can't show them right now. And you also want to use a pruning saw. And the reason that you want to use a pruning saw is because blackberries have a really, really thick cane at the base where you're going to need to be removing them, and a pruning saw works really well. I find that the older I get and the more I've got some arthritis in my hands, using hand pruners is just really painful after a short period of time, and trying to force myself to cut too large a diameter of a plant branch or cane really, it's just like, why am I doing that to myself? I should be using the right tool for the job. And in this instance, using a pruning saw is absolutely the right choice. So let's start by taking a look at where these blackberries are placed. It's always good in permaculture to take a moment and check and see where our plants are positioned in the landscape and how they're interacting with the surrounding plantings, wind, environment, etc. So here I have my peach tree, which is partially pruned. I'll be finishing that hopefully later today. I have a pawpaw here. I have obviously my cattle panel arch here, which has goji berries on the far side of it. Now, this is a pathway. I go ahead and let the dandelions proliferate. They don't bother me at all. And they provide early bee food, and if I'm low on greens for chicken snacks, I just pop them up and feed them to the chickens and ducks. So as I move through here, you can see the mess of the blackberries kind of fallen onto this bush cherry here. And down below, I have lots of ground cover plants, both pollinator attractors and food plants. And then this is my neighbor's arborvitae hedge, and it does a really good job of shielding plants here from the winds that come this way toward the camera here from the Columbia Gorge. Now you can see this is a big, big mess. I have 2 triple crown plants here. It might be hard to see where the base of the plant is because everything is flopped over, but right back in there is one plant. And right back in here is the base of the other plant. So just 2 plants produces a huge amount of vegetative material. Now, some of this I'm going to keep, and some of it I need to remove. All right. Oh, I also have this blueberry that's getting smothered here. This is one of my best producing blueberries, and boy, I need to uncover it. So how do I know what of all of this massive vegetation needs to go? Keep in mind, I should have removed all of the parts that needed to be pruned off in October or November, and I just didn't get around to it. It's not too late now, but I have to be careful that I don't damage the parts of the plant that will be flowering and fruiting this year. So let's take a look at this cane right next to me. Cane fruit produce in a 2-year cycle. So early in the spring and through the early summer, they send up shoots from the ground that are vegetative shoots and do not flower. They are called primocanes, and this is an example of one of last year's primocanes. So this came up from the ground last year. You can see it's very long and straight, and it is thinking about now in its second year of life about sending out side shoots that will produce flowers and fruit this year. So this was a primocane last year. It is now entering year 2, and it becomes a florocane. The florocane will set flowers and produce fruit. And let me show you what last year's florocanes look like. Here's one right here. This is what I should have removed in the fall, and I didn't. And again, not too late now. If you're like me, it's not too late. So you can see here those little buds we just saw on the primocane become these side shoots, and they produce flowers and fruit. So here's the remnants of that. There's a whole bunch of them. You can see how many there are off one cane. So I know to remove this because I'm looking for older wood that has kind of a browning, brittle quality to it. It's old and spent. And I know that it is a florocane that fruited last year because it has all of these side shoots. It's not one nice, neat green, It's not one nice, neat green linear shoot. It is this browning piece of cane that has all of these lateral shoots coming off of it. That means it is one that is done and needs to go, and I will need to cut it off way back at the base. So again, here is last year's primocane, which will become this year's florocane. These are going to send out side shoots. You can tell the spent canes because they have already produced those side shoots all along and are now turning brown and woody. This is what you want to take out. This is what you want to keep because it is going to fruit for you this year. And during the spring and early summer, you will see new shoots coming up from the base. You want to save those. Those will be this year's primocanes, which will become next year's florocanes. So let me get to work here. Whew, okay. Ooh, the crows are not happy with me. Okay, so after removing all of the old spent florocanes from last year, I'm ready to start looking through the primocanes and deciding which ones are the most robust looking. Any spindly ones, any cracked ones, any broken ones, I want to cut off a few inches above the ground. And again, when I'm removing canes, I don't remove them straight at ground level. I find that that provides a pathway for fungal diseases to get in directly from the dirt into those very low cuts. So I cut a few inches off the ground, maybe 5, and I find that that works for me. So I'm gonna go through my primocanes now, leave 2 to 4 of the best looking, most robust canes, and then I'm going to string those up to the hedge. All right, you can see all of the kind of woody material is gone. My blueberry is starting to appear from the middle of this tangle of canes. I'm going to go in and evaluate the canes for their health and vigor. So here's a good place to start looking. This is a cane that is really twisted and bent. Oh, Nerf dart, they're all over my yard. So it's twisted and bent because sometime during the year last year, the support gave out on it when it was still quite young and floppy. And these are not great canes to string up. They don't like to stay strung up. The wood is a little bit more woody now, for lack of a better word. And they're kind of messy and they don't really fit. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove this cane, even though it would fruit this year. Another example of a cane I want to remove are these little spindly ones. So look at this diameter. It's like about a pencil width versus this good robust one here. This is a keeper. This is a keeper. You can see the comparison if I stand them up, which one I want to keep and which one I want to get rid of. So here's an example of a primo cane that already has side shoots and it will still fruit this year. If late in the summer or in the early fall, your primo cane got damaged to the end of it and this one got broken, that can stimulate it to send off these side shoots. It is still a good fruit producing cane for this year. So just be aware, the plant will send off these side shoots if it gets damaged at the top as a way to compensate. But you can see here, I'm still gonna get flowers and fruit off of it. So I will keep this one. Now following this spindly cane over this way, I couldn't get it to come out of the ground and I gave it a good tug and you can see here what I mean. It has tip rooted and blackberries have really sturdy roots. So you can see how they would take over if you were not conscientious about keeping the plants strung up and the tips off the ground. So I'm gonna pull this up. It's actually tip rooted in 2 places. So here's what we've got. No reason I can't snip this off here, put it in a pot and share it with a friend who wants to start some blackberries. For this, I can use my clippers. Here's another great example of tip rooting. You can just clip it, probably leave maybe 1 or 2 sets of leaves, and then this can get potted up and become a whole new plant. Okay, so when I say using a pruning saw is the right choice, you can see why. This is really thick and dense. And here's the old woody cane from last year. This is a fluoro cane from last year that I removed. And it's basically like a tree branch, but more fibrous and more dense. And you'll just kill your hands trying to use pruners for that. A saw is the tool for this job. Okie doke, this is what we're dealing with. Not super pretty right now. Obviously, I have no control over the neighbor's hedge and the fact that it's kind of struggling. You can see when I first put in these blackberries, somebody was giving away some decorative garden trellising and I wired it to the fence that is in here, my neighbor's fence, as a support. But the arborvitae so quickly covers it that it doesn't end up being that useful for me. So I end up using string. You can see last year's jute. I prefer to use something that I can compost like cotton or jute rather than using wires, and I definitely don't use plastic ties. So now I have all of my primo canes here flopped everywhere, including tangled in this blueberry, and they need to be strung up. So that is my next plan. All right, so I'm all done with my job here of rehabbing my blackberries. So I know it's green on green contrast. I hope that we will be able to get through this description and it will be apparent to y'all what I've done. So I took those canes that were last year's primo canes, they will be this year's fluoro canes, and I have propped them up here. And then I have taken them and bent them around like this, and you can see the end down here is well off the ground. This method, again, canes up against the hedge, looped around and tied, and there's the ends. This method prevents tip rooting and keeps your patch from walking. It's really, really effective. So I will get along this length up here. Let's let the bus go by. Along here is where I will get all of the side shoots that come out and will flower. And so this method also keeps my fruit up off the ground. No ability to tip root. Fruit is going to be produced out here from those lateral shoots, and it keeps the fruit up and off the ground and easy to harvest. This is my favorite way to train my blackberries. Now, these are going to be the fluoro canes. This spring and early summer, new shoots will come up from the base and will be primo canes. And what I failed to do last year because it got away from me is the primo canes I will take and I will train them up this way. So that next fall, I don't actually have to go through this process of stringing the primo canes up to the hedge. All I will have to do is come in, cut here, and the next year's fruiting canes will be in a loop this way. It's a really, really easy system. You keep the fluoro canes on one side and the primo canes on the other, and it keeps it nice and neat and tidy, prevents tip rooting, keeps your fruit up off the ground. It's a really handy dandy method. All right, thank you for watching today. I hope that you feel like you are equipped now to take care of your blackberries, that you can confidently grow those cane fruits knowing that they will be well behaved and contained because you're giving them the proper care that they need to thrive while not taking over your garden. I hope that this video helps you know that nothing is unfixable in the garden. Nothing is beyond the point of bringing it back into lush abundance, peak fertility, and peak beauty. It's okay if you let things go. So don't be hard on yourself. Enjoy your garden. When you've got the time to come step back into it and get it back in shape, just like me, then take advantage of it, knowing that your garden can thrive even when things don't run exactly on schedule. If you enjoyed this video, you can check out my Patreon and my PayPal down in the description. That's a great way to say thanks, Angela. I appreciate the content that you make. I'll be back soon. Thanks.